Here is a strange and true story. About 100 years ago, young women went to work each day. They painted tiny watch dials with a paint that could glow in the dark. The paint was beautiful. It shone with a soft green light. The women loved it. They did not know a terrible secret. The glowing paint was slowly killing them, one small brushstroke at a time. This is the true story of the Radium Girls. It is a story of light and lies. It is a story of pain, but also of great courage. Let us go back to the very beginning. Our story starts with the discovery. In the year 1898, two scientists worked in Paris. Their names were Marie and Pierre Curie. They studied strange rocks that gave off energy. This energy was called radioactivity. The Curies found a new element inside the rocks. They called it radium. Radium was amazing. It glowed with a faint light all by itself. It seemed to hold a hidden power, almost like magic. At first, people loved radium. They thought it was healthy. Companies put tiny bits of radium into many products. There was radium water and radium toothpaste. People believed this glowing element was good for the body. Doctors gave people radium treatments. Rich people drank radium water for energy. Some believed it could cure almost any illness. Nobody understood the danger. The whole world loved this glowing new element. One man saw a clever use for radium. His name was Dr. Sabin von Sahaki. He mixed radium with other powders. This made a special paint. The paint could glow softly in the dark with no battery at all. The glowing paint was called undark. It was perfect for watch dials. Now, people could read a clock at night. Soldiers could check the time in a dark trench. The paint seemed like a gift. This was the time of the First World War. Armies needed clocks and dials that glowed. Pilots and soldiers had to read their instruments in the dark. So the demand for the glowing paint grew very fast. In the year 1917, a factory opened in Orange, New Jersey. It belonged to the United States Radium Corporation. Inside, workers used the glowing paint. They painted numbers onto watches and clocks all day. The factory needed careful workers with steady hands, so it hired young women. Many were still teenagers. The pay was very good. To get such a job felt lucky. The girls were proud and happy. The work looked simple and clean. Each woman sat at a long table covered with tiny watch dials. She held a thin paintbrush. She dipped it in the glowing paint and filled each small number. But there was a problem. The brushes had to make very fine lines. After only a few strokes, the brush lost its point. The women needed a sharp tip again, so their bosses taught them a special little trick. The trick was called lip pointing. The women put the brush between their lips. They turned it to make a sharp point. Then they dipped it in the paint and painted. Lip, dip, paint. Again and again, all day. The bosses said this trick was quick and safe. They told the women not to worry. A few felt unsure about putting the brush in their mouths, but they were told it was fine, so they obeyed. Do you see the danger? Every time a woman shaped the brush, she swallowed a little paint. She swallowed a little radium too. Small amounts, thousands of times a day, entered her mouth and slipped into her body. The women asked if the paint was safe. The company said yes. The bosses told them radium was harmless. There was nothing to fear. So the young women trusted them and kept working. The paint got everywhere. It covered their hands and hair. It touched their clothes and faces. At night, the women seemed to shine. They walked home glowing softly in the dark, like gentle ghosts. Their families sometimes saw them glow, too. A mother might notice her daughter shining faintly at night. It seemed funny and magical then. Nobody guessed the glow was a sign of poison. The girls even had fun with it. Some painted their nails with the glowing paint. Some painted their teeth to surprise their friends. They wore their best dresses to work, so the dresses would glow later at parties. In those years, radium felt exciting, not frightening. The women had no reason to be afraid. They were young and full of hope. They thought the glowing dust on their skin was just pretty sparkle. For a while, life was good. The women earned money. They made close friends at the long tables. They laughed and sang while they painted. Nobody imagined that this cheerful job would soon bring so much pain. One of the workers was named Molly Maggia. She was a young woman, full of life. Like the others, she painted dials every day. Like the others, she pointed her brush between her lips again and again. In 1921, Molly began to feel ill. First, she had a very bad toothache. A dentist took out the tooth. But the pain did not stop. Instead, painful sores spread inside her mouth. Something was very wrong. Molly's illness grew worse and worse. The bones in her jaw became weak and sick. The doctors were confused. They had never seen anything like it before. Nothing they tried could stop the strange and terrible disease. Piece by piece, Molly lost her teeth. The sickness slowly ate away at the bone of her jaw. She was in constant pain. Her family watched helplessly as this strong young woman faded away. In September 1922, Molly Maggia died. She was only 24 years old. The doctors wrote down the wrong cause of death. Nobody understood the real reason yet. Nobody blamed the glowing paint she had used. Not yet. But Molly was not the only one. Other dial painters fell sick too. Their teeth fell out. Their bones ached and broke easily. Some grew weak and pale. A quiet fear spread through the factory. The women could not understand it. They were young. They had been healthy and strong. Why were so many getting sick? Why did it always begin in the mouth and the bones? What was happening? The answer was the radium. The radium they had swallowed did not leave their bodies. It went deep into their bones and stayed there. Day and night it sent out tiny rays. Slowly it destroyed them from inside. At last, some doctors began to investigate. They studied the sick women carefully. They tested their breath and their bodies. To their shock, the women were giving off tiny rays. The radium was inside them. Now the truth was clear. The radium in the paint had entered the women's bones. It would stay there for the rest of their lives. There was no cure. Doctors could not remove it, and they could not stop the harm. Meanwhile, the company knew more than it admitted. The scientists who handled radium protected themselves with care. They used lead screens and long tongs. Some wore masks. They knew radium could be dangerous. Yet the young women at the tables had no protection at all. Nobody gave them masks or gloves. Nobody told them to stop using their lips. The company kept its knowledge hidden and simply let the women work. When the workers got sick, the company denied everything. It said the paint was safe. It said radium had nothing to do with their illness. Some bosses even blamed other diseases to hide the real cause. The company even asked its own doctors to examine the women. But it did not always tell the women the truth about the results. Reports that pointed straight to radium were quietly kept out of sight. This was a cruel thing to do. The women were suffering. Some of them were dying, and the company that had poisoned them refused to help. It cared more about money and its good name than about their lives. One woman decided to fight back. Her name was Grace Frier. She had worked at the factory for years. Now her back and her teeth were failing, but Grace was brave, and she wanted to know the truth. Grace believed the radium had made her ill. She wanted the company to admit it. She wanted to warn the other workers, and she wanted justice for her dead friends. So she decided to go to court, but finding help was very hard. Grace was just a factory worker, but the company was rich and powerful. For 2 long years, she searched for a lawyer who was brave enough to take her difficult case. At last, a young lawyer agreed to help. His name was Raymond Berry. He was clever and determined. He listened to Grace's whole story. He believed her, and he decided to fight the powerful company beside her. 4 other sick women joined Grace in the case. Together, the 5 women sued the United States Radium Corporation. The newspapers wrote about them everywhere. They called them the case of the 5 women doomed to die. Each of the 5 women was sick in her own way. Some had lost their teeth. Some could no longer stand up straight. Some carried tumors deep in their bones. Yet together, they somehow found the strength to fight. By now, the women were terribly ill. Some could barely walk. Some could not raise their arms. Their bones were so weak, they broke easily. Time was running out, and everybody knew it. The court case began in early 1928. When the women came to court, they were too weak to lift their hands. They could not even raise their arms to take the oath. The whole country began to notice. Newspapers printed their story across the whole nation. People were shocked and angry. How could a company treat its workers this way? How could it hide the truth while young women died? The public demanded justice. The company still hoped to delay. It knew the women were dying. Perhaps it hoped they would die before the trial even ended. But the pressure from the public and the newspapers grew stronger every single day. Finally, in the summer of 1928, the company agreed to settle. Each of the 5 women received money. They got $10,000 and a payment every year. The company also paid their medical bills. It was not a full victory. Money could not give them back their health. Money could not undo the harm. But the women had been heard at last. They had made a powerful company answer for what it did. Sadly, the fight was not over. Far away in Ottawa, Illinois, another factory used the very same glowing paint. It was called the Radium Dial Company. There, more young women painted dials and pointed brushes with their lips. The women in Illinois got sick as well. Their company also hid the danger. It had even done secret tests on the workers. The tests showed they were poisoned, but the company said nothing. The company had known for years that the paint was dangerous, but it kept telling the women to keep painting. It even put up a sign praising the safety of the work. It was a heartless lie. One brave woman there was named Catherine Donahue. She had painted dials for years. Now she was very thin and weak. Radium was breaking her bones and her body. But like Grace, she refused to stay silent. Catherine and her sick friends took the company to court. People gave them a very sad name. They were called the Society of the Living Dead, because everyone knew these women did not have long to live. Catherine was so weak that she could not go to the courtroom, so the court came to her. She gave her testimony from her own bed in her small house. She was dying, but she spoke the truth clearly. In 1938, Catherine Donahue won her case. The judge agreed that the paint had poisoned her. It was a great victory for all the workers, but Catherine was too sick to enjoy it. She died soon after the win. The Radium Girls had paid a terrible price. Many died young. Others lived for years in great pain. But their suffering was not in vain. Their courage would change the world for millions of workers. Because of the Radium Girls, laws began to change. Companies could no longer hide dangers from their workers. Workers won the right to be safe on the job, and they won the right to sue if a company harmed them. Scientists also learned an important lesson. They learned how dangerous radium inside the body could be. This knowledge helped protect people who worked with radiation later. The women's suffering saved many future lives. Years later, during the Second World War, dials still glowed with radium. But now, the workers were properly protected. They no longer pointed brushes with their lips. The hard lesson of the Radium Girls was finally remembered. The Radium Girls were no longer only victims. They became a warning and a symbol. They showed that ordinary workers could stand up to powerful companies. They showed the truth is worth fighting for. Think about who these women really were. They were not famous or rich. They were ordinary girls with simple dreams. They wanted good jobs and happy lives. Instead, they became heroes in a fight they never chose. History does not always remember such people, but we should remember them. Grace Frier, Maggia, Catherine Donahue, and many more. They gave their health and often their lives so others could be safe. There is one more strange fact to know. Radium stays active for a very, very long time. The radium in their bones did not fade away. Even today, in their graves, their bones still give off a faint glow. Scientists say the radium in those bones will keep glowing for over 1,000 years. It is a haunting thought. The light that these women loved so much became the light that would never let them go. So, what can we learn from the Radium Girls? We must always ask questions. We must not simply trust that something is safe, and we must never let a company hide the truth to protect its money. We also learn about courage. Grace Frier and Catherine Donahue were weak in body, but very strong in spirit. They were dying, yet they fought for others. Their bravery still shines, far brighter than any glowing paint. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope it helped your English today. If it did, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. A new story is coming in just a few days. And do not stop practicing now. Tap the video on your screen to watch the next story, or open the playlist and keep on listening. The more you listen, the better your English will become. See you in the next story.